And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todders. And I am Steve Deace. We are brought to you by our friends over at Voice of Judah, Israel. Who knows? We might be living in the period of time right now the Bible speaks of, a great harvest of the Jewish people coming back home to their Messiah. And that is where a Messianic Jewish ministry is located, that is fixated on just this particular moment. And if you want to be a part of that ministry and that calling, like the Apostle Paul, you're not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, then join with our friends at Voice of Judah, Israel. They are meeting the needs of the Jewish people. Really, all the Israeli people need Jesus. There's 6 million Jews, over 6 million Jews there that don't know their Messiah. I know there are 3 million Gentiles that don't know Jesus as Messiah either. And so Voice of Judah Israel is there in the heart of the Holy Land. They're there ministering to the needs of the Israeli people on a charitable basis, but also their ultimate need, spiritual food, the preaching, teaching, word and sacrament of the gospel. You can learn more about their cause and support it if you go to vojisrael.org/Steve. VOJ for Voice of Judah Israel. vojisrael.org/Steve is where you can go to learn more today. All right, coming up on today's show, we will be joined. Remember, we've got a bit of a short week this week, so we're trying to get a lot of things fit in here in the limited amount of time we have, because we're off the rest of the week after today. So we're going to be joined by the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, coming up at the end of the show. Buy, sell, or hold coming your way at the top of next hour. We'll get to as many of those as we can, and then the rest will be in overtime for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. And then we're going to have former U.S. Senator and presidential candidate Rick Santorum is going to join us here at the bottom of the hour. So we'll get started with all of that, of course, right after we start with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the JFK Files. At the order of President Trump, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard released thousands of documents and tens of thousands of pages of previously unreleased or redacted information about the JFK assassination. Not even going to attempt to highlight the new find so far, but Trump did follow through on his promise earlier this week and on the campaign trail. Okay, I lied. There is actually one finding from the new JFK Files. This is a memorandum dated the 15th of May, 1965, to then FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. A lot of it is redacted, but on point number 5, you'll see that pumpkin spice is trash. That's big if true. The release was delayed yesterday, probably owing to Trump's phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump says a ceasefire on power plants and other industrial infrastructure was agreed upon and says Putin is ready for the killing to end. More juricratic nonsense. A federal judge in Washington, D.C. says Trump can't kick troons out of the military. Another federal judge in Maryland also ruled yesterday that Trump and Elon Musk must restore the U.S. Agency for International Development. And that was after U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts wrote a libtard blog post saying he doesn't think Trump should threaten judges with impeachment. According to the Federalist, that statement from Roberts was only given to select members of left-wing media and not published at the Supreme Court's official media room. Learning Chinese today, today's phrase is, gee, I wonder who leaked the Dobbs opinion.
哎呀，我想知道是谁泄露了多布斯的意见。
Trump gave Fox News last night his take on the ongoing vandalism and firebombing campaign against Tesla.
You consider this an act of domestic terrorism?
I think so.
Why?
I think that if and when they catch the people, and I hope they do, the good thing is they have a lot of cameras in those places, and they've caught some already having to do with that. I think that you will find out that they're paid by people that are very highly political on the left.
Tim Walz, your thoughts?
Saying on my phone, I don't know, some of you know this on the iPhone, they've got that little stock app. I added Tesla to it to give me a little boost during the day. 225 and dropping.
Chuck Schumer, your thoughts?
And you know what their attitude is? I made my money all by myself. How dare your government take my money from me? I don't want to pay taxes. Or, I built my company with my bare hands. How dare your government tell me how I should treat my customers, the land and water that I own, or my employees? They hate government. Government's a barrier to people, a barrier to stop them from doing things. They want to destroy it. We are not letting them do it.
And finally, it's time for a Marxist Madness update. In the tolerance region, a lot of chalk, but in the 3-6 matchup, it's pretty stiff between Save Porn, Vote Democrat. They're actually losing the 3 seed to the 6 seed, Don't Tell, Don't Tell. The biggest upset in the making right now, the 8 seed in the diversity region. Rights come from where? They are absolutely trouncing the number 1 seed, the Marsh family. In the equity region, the National Cathedral Witch, the 7 seed, with another big upset, leading Man Enough by 15 points. Also in the equity region, high-tech trafficking, the 6 seed beating up on Girls Gone Primal, 72-26. And finally, in the inclusion region, Roots Part 2 and Sunny Hostin, they are absolutely trouncing Roots Part 1, 65-35%. That has been a Marxist Madness update. You have until Thursday morning to vote on the first round, who will go to the Soviet 16. And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by a new partner here on the show, Smart Credit. You know, with interest rates expected to drop, you could save a ton on everything you finance. That's great news, right? But here's the thing. To cash in on those savings, you need likely a higher credit score. How, you ask? Well, with Smart Credit. On average, Smart Credit users raise their credit scores up to 34 points in just 34 days. So imagine a lower car payment, a better mortgage payment, major savings on both of those. Smart Credit's patented technology scans your credit profile and pinpoints exactly which bills to pay and when to maximize your score. It's like having the best credit knowledge in your pocket. So don't wait. Take control of your credit score with Smart Credit and be ready to cash in when interest rates fall. Start with your 7-day trial at smartcredit.com/Steve for just $1. A 7-day trial at smartcredit.com/Steve for just $1, and just go there for $1 and find out how many points you can add to your credit score, and then you make the decision if you want to stay at that point, if you think it's worth it. It'll cost you just $1 for a week to find out. All right, that's smartcredit.com/Steve, smartcredit.com/Steve. Average point changes are based on historical data. Individual results may vary and are not guaranteed. All right, quick thoughts, Todd, on what we're seeing in Marxist Madness. I did forecast a 1-8 upset there with the clip from MSNBC, just unique for our audience in particular. I mean, we have MSNBC essentially saying there was never a country called America. These thoughts that rights come from God are nuts and crazy, and as annoying and really as metaphorically symbolic of the spirit of the age the Marsh family happens to be. They are a mere symbol of the spirit of the age. The heart and soul of it is that MSNBC clip, just to completely undo the entirety of your civilization right down to the studs. All right, just take it completely out. And so I'm not surprised that upset's happening. I'm a little surprised there at the margin of victory. I thought Man Enough had championship potential until I saw that it was going to be opposite the National Cathedral Witch. That's still fresh in everybody's minds too. That's how we kind of started off the year. That was really the first viral clip of 2025, right? And you get the value added of a J.D. Vance, facial expression memeability thrown in too. So it's kind of a twofer there, So Man Enough looks like it's not going to be man enough to get past the first round. What do you think so far about the results we're seeing?
Yeah, I'm not surprised about your analysis either. I agree. I will say I thought that 3-6 matchup there between Primal Scream and High Tech. I thought that whoever won that thing might run the table from there on out. But I thought it would be a little bit closer. High Tech is, I think it's hitting where your base, Steve, has been for a very long time. You've set the table with the fundamentals, as it were, both in your personal life and what you bring to the table on this show. And I think our listeners are feeling you, dog. You start handing adopted babies off to bearded ladies. I mean, isn't that what the Steve Deace Show has been putting down ever since you got this microphone? So
warning that we would eventually end up in those very situations. Yeah. Where then is the line drawn? What is true? What is the law then? What would it be based on? How would we know what those things are? I'm going to talk more about that again in a moment here. But yes, I mean, never forget, someone will always rule and something must always be worshipped. Those are iron laws of the universe every time. Aaron, what stood out to you that was the most surprising so far?
I really thought that the Marsh family, I thought it would at least be closer. The Marsh family versus rights come from where. I thought that would be closer, but some of these margins are what are surprising me. We're sitting at about 50-50, 50% chalk, 50% upset. So, I mean, what can you say? You couldn't ask for more chaos than that.
Let's switch gears and talk about the ongoing battle with the judges. Late last night, we had a rainbow jihad judge appointed by Barack Obama. I think that she has the power to determine who can and cannot serve in the armed forces. I wasn't aware she was elected commander-in-chief of the U.S. military. I saw an amazing stat posted this morning. I want to give Eric Tetzel credit for this. He used to work for Senator Josh Hawley, and he pointed out that about 70% of all federal court injunctions that have been issued so far in the 21st century, about 70% of them have been issued by 92% Democrat-appointed justices, and specifically against President Trump. That's crazy. Let me repeat that. So good work to Eric Tetzel for this stat. Let me repeat that. Almost 70% of all federal court injunctions issued so far in the 21st century against presidential administrations have been issued by 92% Democrat-appointed justices, specifically against President Trump. You go back and you look at the first couple days of the story we had that there were FISA warrants being sought by James Comey and the FBI against the Trump administration. And many of us, myself included, didn't even know what a FISA court was. I had to look it up. Never heard the term one time. There were two individuals, given their backgrounds, that immediately saw what the larger stakes were here. Not surprisingly, the great one, Mark Levin, who made his bones as one of the prosecutors in the Ken Starr impeachment inquiry, and is really, I mean, he is essentially the intellectual architect of the Convention of States movement. We're going to talk more about that with Senator Rick Santorum here at the bottom of the hour, among many other things. And then Dan Bongino, given his extensive work within law enforcement, NYPD, Secret Service, they were out in front. Those two individuals were, and Dan Bongino, by the way, where's he at today?
Trump administration?
He is. He is now the deputy director of the FBI. Those two individuals saw what was really going on here and what the real ramifications of it were before really anybody else did that had a platform of significance. And they recognized that they used a term that we had not heard very often in American political parlance. And now, unfortunately, we've just heard it way too often in the last 5 years since the Russian collusion story with the FISA court broke open in 2019. And the term they used was coup. That this was an attempt by the state to interpose its power upon Trump's presidential campaign in the hopes of denying him victory, and then also, if they weren't able to do that, to deny him essentially a legitimate presidency after the fact. And they turned out to be exactly right about that. What we're facing right now, I'm going to use the word coup again. Because what we are facing right now, as far as I know, I am the only person with a national platform on the right to have successfully defeated it. Not single-handedly, but I certainly led the effort that won. Helped to lead the effort that won. You're facing a judicial coup. Those numbers from Eric Tetzel quantify it. Every bit as much as FISA court warrants against the Trump campaign quantified a coup in that sense. Again, almost 70% of all federal injunctions issued against a president in the 21st century have been issued by judges, 92% of whom appointed by Democrats, specifically against President Trump. That is a judicial coup. On the right, we have had one major victory ever in modern times against judicial tyranny. And it happened right here in the state of Iowa. We did it. We remain the only state in American history to banish judges via retention election for no other reason other than their own opinions. All of the arguments that now have come to bear all over again are the exact arguments that we had to face and defeat in Iowa. What we saw in Iowa is a court thought that it had the power to be its own unelected perpetual constitutional convention. Like, frankly, we have allowed the courts to be for decades. But here's the thing. We're kind of in an era right now where we're kind of waking up to the fact we've allowed too much madness to go on. And so now is the time to do something about it. Now is the time, as our theme of the year says, to lead. Unfortunately, this is one area we don't have a lot of experience. Even when our show helped to lead the fight against COVID, in many respects, I was a latecomer to these kinds of issues. There was already a pre-existing movement. You're kind of part of that subculture, Todd. There was a pre-existing movement of skepticism against public health care policy and these captured regulatory institutions that I was loosely aware of the conflict, but really had no impetus to get on the front lines of that fight until one day, about this time 5 years ago, that our lives as we knew it as Americans were at an end, with no idea that they would ever return, or if they would. In this case, I have been at the vanguard of this pushback. I don't know that anyone combined has done more shows, more interviews, written more articles, more research, on top of actually winning on this issue than I have. That's not necessarily a compliment. I think it speaks to the fact that we haven't even tried, by and large. We haven't even tried. There are going to be people that know more about this than me, but they don't have a W. As far as I know, I'm the only one with a W on my resume. And frankly, I wouldn't be here without that W. Because many of the same Christian businessmen that funded that effort against the judges were the same ones who came to me after we succeeded in that effort here in Iowa and said we would not have won that without you, and put up the capital for me to leave local radio and see if I could make it nationally. Why? Their goal when we started this effort 14 years ago, almost exactly 14 years ago, it was February of 2011 when we started our effort to see if my show could grow beyond Des Moines. The goal was ultimately to see if, with their resources, I could be in a place to have as much national influence on these kinds of battles as what I had demonstrated in Iowa. Well, 14 years later, here we are. All of the themes and all of the arguments that we defeated in that historic moment in the state of Iowa, all of them, are exactly what is being faced today. I've heard this all before. I've faced this all before. I have defeated this all before. What we need to understand is ultimately what the argument is a question of authority. It's not really a question of legal theory. That's the symptom of the argument. Who's really in charge of the United States of America? And it's not even which branch vis-a-vis the other. It's really whether we the people are. Do we exist for the government? Do we exist for the system? Or does the government and the system exist for us? That's really the heart of the argument. For a long time on the American right, we agreed to play this game by their rules. We set up our own ancillary organizations for conservative justices. And our politicians loved this. because it allowed a lot of Republican Pontius Pilates to emerge for decades. Your outrage, I sense it, I feel it, I may share it even. But alas, hand me the basin again. I must wash my hands of the matter. There's nothing I can do. Thus speaketh the judges. Yes, I know I am prefect. I know I am the one that Rome ultimately put in charge here. But I'm just powerless. There's nothing I can do. I must respond. So wash my hands of it I shall. And that was the vast majority of our Republicans. It was a perfect setup. Share our angst, share our frustrations. And at the same time, have no expectations to do anything about it. Because after all, hand me Mr. Pilate's basin. I too now must wash my hands as Senator so-and-so and Governor so-and-so and Congressman so-and-so. There's nothing I can do. The judges have spoken. Now, with just a minimal amount of common sense, this whole thing would unravel. So wait a minute here. I mean, we fought a revolutionary war over a lack of agency and representation. As Englishmen were now essentially evicted from their own citizenship. And you're claiming that the system they set up after the fact was with the intent of just replacing it with the exact same thing? People they didn't vote for, people they didn't elect, have all the power, and there's no recompense? There's no accountability? They had elections too. They were electing people to House of Burgesses. They were electing delegates to parliaments. Meaningless, because they had no force or will. They had no power. And so your argument, the heart of your argument is that they did all of that. They pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honors just to then reinstall the exact same system. Just with an American accent. Of course not. But see, we were in on the scam on our side. That's why so few have W's here. The Republican politicians in many cases wanted this. It absolved them from responsibility to lead. Electability without accountability, very few politicians will not take that deal every time it's offered. Well, now, however, we have come to the fork in the road because we now have a president who has demonstrated, even with the release of these JFK files last night, that on at least some level he is serious about a paradigm shift in America. And so what has happened? A niche group of justices appointed by his political opponents who tried to coup him and then tried to kill him are now attempting to coup him again through their judges in unprecedented fashion. And they're going to make you want to think this is about legal theory A versus codicil B and subsection C. It's not about any of that. It's about power and who really wields it here in this place called America. Are the people ultimately in charge? Or are the bureaucrats? The unelected judges? Do they serve you or do you serve them? When a president goes awry, we've got these things called elections. You can just get another president. When a member of Congress or a senator goes awry, we have these things called elections. Just get another one if you want. Interestingly, the two greatest powers any government could ever have is the power to coin a money and raise an army. Those two powers were given to which legislative branches? Or which of the three branches? The legislative and the executive. The two that you vote for. Notice they weren't given to the judicial. And that's on purpose. But if you don't want to listen to me, if you don't want to trust me and some of my thoughts on the matter, let's consult perhaps a subject matter expert. Quote, "The Constitution on this hypothesis is a mere thing of wax in the hands of the judiciary. Quote, one single object will merit the endless gratitude of society, that of restraining unelected judges from usurpation. End quote. I have an entire file of these kinds of quotes, all from the same person. The man who literally wrote the mission statement for the United States of America, Thomas Jefferson. Even in the infamous case of Marbury versus Madison, where the courts granted themselves the power of judicial review, even in that case, John Marshall dared not issue an order against President Madison, because that would be, even in his mind, going too far. And these judges today, all they do is issue affirmative orders, carry out my edicts, carry out my opinions. Run for office then, sir or ma'am, and get elected. You don't have that power. We were always going to come to this place, the place we are right now. They were never, ever going to just admit defeat. They were always going to do whatever it took to stop us. And I can promise you, they won't stop unless they are stopped. Unless they are stopped. Last year, 15 years after we corrected the state Supreme Court, the Iowa State Supreme Court found that you have an inherent right to life in our Constitution. We're one of the few states that has done that too. I can promise you that never happens. That never happens if we don't successfully confront and defeat the idea that these judges were supreme. Never happens. I can promise you this current administration, we desperately want to be successful, need to be successful, and is off to such a successful start, will not finish successfully unless the same thing is done. There are very few of us that are equipped to do this. Even fewer, frankly, who've actually won anything by doing it. I'm one of the few, maybe the only one. And my first piece of advice is this. Something that it's very clear Stephen Miller, following closely what he has had to say the last 48 hours, understands. We are not going to defeat this by granting their premises and then trying to beat them at their own game. Which means, frankly, we're going to have to go outside a lot of the contemporary conservative legal sphere. Because they are completely bought in to this scam. So just like we had to go outside of the traditional GOP political sphere to get an administration that was actually serious about immigration for a change, that was actually serious about America First foreign policy for a change, all the same consensus that led to neocon adventuring in foreign policy, and all the same consensus that led to, well, we have to have cheap labor for our corporate overlords. All that same consensus on the right also exists in the legal sphere. Because much of the right has been predicated for too long on maintaining its own grift. And there's a great amount of money and power to be wielded in coming up with the alternative list of conservative justices. It is now time, actually, to return power to the true alternative, the people, where it belongs. There is one place in all of America so far where we have successfully done this. One, my home state, where I helped lead the way on that. And all the same arguments and all the same fallacies. And wait, the fake right will soon emerge to say, well, we have to do what the courts say, of course. And you're allowed to kvetch and lament all you want. John Roberts fired the first salvo on that yesterday. No, sir, we're the people. We can impeach. We can have our elected representatives impeach a justice because we just don't. It's Tuesday and we felt like it. We're the power here, not you. We the people are. And it is time to return the power to the people. And if we don't, the courts will take all the power away from the people's elected representatives as they currently are. Folks, I want to say thank you again for just how generous you have been to our partners over at Preborn. I mean, this has just been an incredible partnership between us and Preborn, the Blaze and Preborn the last few years. We have helped them save tens of thousands of babies and their mamas. And Preborn does it the old-fashioned way. They follow the biblical model of truth and grace for persuasion. They confront moms with the truth. They're considering murdering their own child. They confront them with the truth that hey, that's not an unviable tissue mass. That's not a blob you're carrying. Here's the heart. Here's that heartbeat, and you don't have two of those. So that belongs to another separate person from you. And then when they confront mom, if she steps into the light, steps away from the temptation to commit murder against her child, and says, "Hey, I choose life," that's when they're there with the grace. And sometimes for up to 2 years after the baby is born, all kinds of prenatal, postnatal help. This isn't just, hey, we're here to save babies. We're here to, this is a ministry, right? I mean, it's usually not a married woman who's in a well-adjusted, secure relationship thinking of murdering her kid. It's the kind of woman who's not, right? So they're there with the support for that mom at the exact same time, prenatal care, postnatal care, sometimes counseling. Practical things, car seats, formula, all right? Of course, they offer this all for free, but none of it actually is free. And folks, this is where we come in, all right? So if you want to make a tax-deductible donation today, you can do so by going to preborn.com/Steve, preborn.com/Steve, and you can give with confidence because Preborn has a 100% charity rating. Make a tax-deductible donation today at preborn.com/Steve, or you can dial #250 and say the keyword baby on your mobile phone. That's #250, keyword baby on your mobile phone. Aaron, are we in Xanadu?
I think we're good to go now.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. I didn't know if I was doing at the end of Romper Room. I see we're in the kaleidoscope. All right, but I think we have Senator Rick Santorum with us now, former Senator Rick Santorum. Brother, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you for your continuing great work on the pro-life cause. We just had our 9th grandbaby.
Oh,
she was born at 23 weeks and weighed 1 pound.
Wow!
And she is now a little over 4 weeks old. She's almost doubled her birth weight, and everyone talks about blobs of tissue. This is 23 weeks. She was born February 13th. She wasn't due till June 10th. And just to give you an idea of life in the womb is really life in the womb. It's not a blob of tissue. It's that little baby. And, God's blessed me again, but it just to show his greatness and his glory by having that little girl survive.
Well, I know you got a chance to see me and our family. I know you still remember my wife Amy whenever you're in
Amy,
Iowa.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
You saw our family quite a bit here when you were campaigning in Iowa. You basically took up residence here for a year and a half. Our oldest daughter, Anastasia, who would have been 10, 11 years old, during that campaigin, a year ago, she got married, gave us our first granddaughter. And she awesome. Just celebrated her 1-year-old birthday. So
awesome. Well, congratulations to you. One other thing before we get to the topic at hand, I just want to congratulate you on the movie Nefarious. To me, it was the best movie of the year. It was unbelievable. Oh, wow. It was beautifully done, beautifully acted. I mean, to me, it was a modern, it was a modern Screw Tape, and you just did a wonderful job. And I haven't had a chance to tell you that, but just loved that movie.
I really appreciate that, brother. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're working right now on a sequel. So we're in the early stages of planning and funding for that. So, all right, let's get to the topic at hand, because frankly, it is very providential. And in many respects, I kind of feel like, Rick, I'm doing the shows I was doing when you were here campaigning in Iowa, fresh off the retention election, where we really were the first people to successfully strike a blow against the idea that the judicial branch is superior to the other branches and even the will of the people. And they're unaccountable. Right. They cannot be held accountable. They cannot be held in check, that the court determines its own jurisdiction, that we the people serve the courts rather than the courts serve us. An independent judiciary does not mean an independent independent branch, but independent of even the will of the people. They can do whatever they want to do. And so we're watching, I think, a judicial coup against the Trump administration take place. I don't know if you saw this stat from Eric Teitzel yesterday, who used to work for Senator Hawley, and he did some research. Eric did some research on this and found that about 70% of the injunctions issued by federal judges against presidents so far in the 21st century have been issued by 92% Democrat-appointed judges specifically against President Trump. That is an incredible stat. That is an incredible stat. Rick, your thoughts on just that stat right from the top?
Well, it is, but it is the nature of which the left has changed the whole concept of judiciary. I just, to hear the Democrats talk about, oh, we have to we have to protect the norms of how our country operates. The problem is they have changed the norms. They have turned the judicial branch, and Schumer is very clear about it, into just another political branch of the government. And they appoint when they have judges come up for confirmation, they ask them all political questions. Say, how are you going to rule on this? What's your opinion on this? It's not what your philosophy is. It's not what's the rule of law. It's not whether you can will adhere to the rule of law. It's, do you agree with me on the hot button issues that I care about? Because I expect you to rule no matter what the law says. I expect you to rule in my favor. In other words, you're just another part of the Congress, if you will. And they have so corrupted the judiciary with judges who simply believe it's their job not to look what the statute says, not to look what the Constitution says, but what the Democratic Party says. And to me, they're the ones undermining the rule of law in this country. They're the one undermining the judiciary. Donald Trump, if a judge, and I'm sure there will be cases where Trump may have exceeded his authority under the law or under the Constitution, and he needs to be slapped back. Fine. That's fully to expect. But the problem is that's not what's going on. What's going on is people not following the rule of law, not looking at the Constitution, and abusing their authority because they disagree with Donald Trump. It's not Trump that's a threat to the judiciary. It's the judges who have politicized the judiciary are a threat to the judicial system in this country.
So I've been asked several times since this last election whether I am still an advocate for things like Convention of States, because, we won. So we're wielding the power now. And my response to that is that's all the more reason to do it now while we have it. I mean, this idea that they're just going to say over there, that's just adorable. You guys got your stuff together and came up with a coalition to even win the popular vote. We really respect going to shake hands like it's the last game of a Stanley Cup playoff series, right? We're just going to line up and congrats, go get him. And of course, we'll be here if you guys don't get it done and try to beat you. But, we'll get out of the way. You guys won this thing fair and square. They were never going to do that, right? And so the fact that we're sitting here right now with a judicial coup underway to try to essentially take all of the momentum away from this administration, nullify this last election, I think that's even more of an argument for why we need to have more and more vehicles in place, Rick, that restore power back directly to the people like a Convention of States does.
100% agree with you, Stephen. I'm actually sitting, you can see I'm sitting in the car. I'm in the parking lot outside the capital of Helena, Montana. And so we're hoping to get the Montana House to vote on, they're going to vote on one of our bills having to do with delegate selection today, and then hopefully the COS resolution. But the thing I say to them, because when they bring up Trump, as you just mentioned, I said, everything that Trump did in his first term was eliminated by Biden in his first term. And everything that Biden did in his first term was eliminated by Trump in his second term. I said, this kind of swinging of the pendulum back and forth, it just gets more extreme each time. I mean, the other side, has retribution, if you will, on the other side. And in our case, I think for good reason. But the reality is it's getting worse and worse, and we have no stability of the law. We have no stability in our government. And the reason is because we need structural change to protect the rights of the people. Because as presidents become more and more powerful and wielding that power, this is threat to basic human freedoms. So what I've suggested is that Trump is doing a great job, but we need to put something in structure to solidify the gains. Right now, I think people are very suspicious of government. They're very suspicious, particularly of the federal government and the bureaucracy in the swamp. There's no better time to act upon that If you look at the Trump administration, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio and Brooke Rollins and Pete Hegseth, all of those are big-time supporters of convention in the states. I wouldn't, the president has actually said some positive things about it too. Look, he needs what we need is the states to respond in supporting Trump by doing this convention to get some of that power back to the people and back to the states, which is what Trump is trying to do.
All right, so final thing I'm going to ask you about, Rick, take a few minutes here and be very practical to our audience and walk through why a convention of states will do, in practicum, exactly what you and I are discussing in theory and philosophically.
Yeah, so a convention state would be called if 34 states pass a resolution to do the three things that you and I have been advocating for, which is term limits on federal office holders, fiscal restraint on the federal government, and limiting the jurisdiction of the federal government. So in other words, culling back some of that jurisdiction from the federal government back to the states and to the localities and to the people. And why will that happen? Well, first off, because at the time the convention is called, 34 states have to be Republican controlled in order to call a convention. Why? Because if a state like Wisconsin, for example, which passed convention of states, if they flip back to Democrat, well, the Democrats will repeal the petition. And so at the time it's called, 34 of the legislatures will have Republican delegations, which means 34 of the 50 states going there will be Republican controlled. It's like saying something bad is going to happen at a Republican convention, they'll nominate a Democrat. Well, no, Republican conventions don't nominate Democrats. They nominate Republicans. You may be good or bad Republicans, but they're going to be within the realm of where the Republican Party is. Same thing at this convention. When you have that big of a majority, you're going to get conservative ideas out of there. Plus, you have this situation where the convention itself is called because 34 states agreed on the exact same language that control the convention. If it matters, I mean, we've had 450 petitions that have passed the legislatures over the past 200 plus years. 49 states have passed resolutions, but we've never had a convention. Why? Because 34 states never passed the exact same language. If the language matters to call the convention, it matters at the convention. It is the rule of the convention. Otherwise, we'd have had dozens of conventions. And finally, anybody who goes to that convention is going to realize this. It takes 38 states to ratify, which means probably four or five Democratic states are going to have to ratify, which means anything that passes at that convention that has any chance of ratification is something that 70 to 80% of the public and states are supportive, which are mainstream things. And I'll use one example to close. The one thing that has come out of every mock convention that will come out of this convention is a petition, is a amendment to limit the Supreme Court to 9 members. If anybody doesn't believe that's important, understand that the Democrats, if they get control back again, and they will at some point, Chuck Schumer and company will eliminate the filibuster and they will pack the court. Why do I think they'll do that? Because they say they're going to do that. They will pack the court. They will admit D.C. and Puerto Rico as a state. They will change the voting laws in this country. And if they pack the court, D.C. is going to file a case at the Supreme. It'll get to the Supreme Court, and we won't have a Second Amendment. People talk about, oh, this convention of states could cause us a Second Amendment. No, if we don't do a convention of states, we will lose the Second Amendment because that's what the Democrats will do. It's about power, and it's about controlling Americans. So this is, to me, well, it'd be a nice thing to do. This is a thing that we need to do to stop the Democrats from doing what they say they're going to do, which is destroy our republic.
Good to see you again, brother. Thank you, Rick.
My pleasure. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate the time.
You bet. Take care. Folks, you want to get more information, go to conventionofstates.com. That's conventionofstates.com. All right, gentlemen, your thoughts. Wanted to make sure we had plenty of time here this hour for you guys to kind of give your thoughts. We've discussed some pretty heavy subject matter so far today. So what do you think? Got about 5 minutes?
Well, the energy of that discussion you just had reminds me a lot of the initial constitutional convention and why they went there initially, and ultimately they looked at each other and they discussed things. And interestingly, their theme at that moment became what your theme is for the show this year, Steve. Lead. Like they weren't sent there to write a constitution, but They did, because they knew the times demanded for it, and they were going to ultimately be the final decider, which goes back to what you just said in the first hour of the show, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, this whole scam is ultimately perpetrated on the people, but the people ultimately are the final decider if they accept that scam or not. What you said about divine providence and him coming on the show, and we had no idea. This happens quite frequently on the show.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something in the water here. It just depends on whether or not we're going to have eyes to see and ears to hear, and then have the courage to do something about it.
Amen.
In a healthy, functioning republic, absolutely, we should expect the most of the three co-equal branches of government, and we should, at least have everybody. We should have the best expectations for everyone. Okay, I respect the opinion of the courts because they're actually trying to do jurisprudence here. That's not what's going on here at all. And so, yes, this is what he said. I said this yesterday as well. It is John Roberts and his ilk of pissant jurists, juricrats, that are actually the ones who are causing a crisis here, not the commander-in-chief. The other day, when Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller went on CNN and schooled that anchor about the Alien Enemies Act and said that this is not justiciable. This is non-justiciable, meaning that this is a power inherent to the presidency. It's not up for the courts to determine whether or not he actually has the power that he actually has.
It's already been determined.
It's already been determined.
Yes.
Michael Schellenberger, great author, did some fantastic work on COVID. I think he's credited as being one of the first people to identify some of the scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology who are doing work on coronaviruses. Did some great work on free speech and the Twitter files. But man, he is out there absolutely trying to torch the Trump administration on this issue. He issued this post yesterday. Listen to this. And you don't have to listen very carefully to figure out what's wrong with it. Quote, "It's not up to the courts. It's up to the courts, not the administration, to determine whether it's non-justiciable. It's up to the Justice Department. It's up to the judiciary to determine whether something is up to the judiciary. How stupid is this?
Yeah.
No, you cannot function in a world like that. This is wicked and evil. And you're absolutely right on the money when you said in the first segment, Steve, they're going to try to make it about some detail, some codicil, about some statute and buried in under 4 and 5 paragraphs. No, it's not about any of that. Those are shiny objects. It is a coup over and over again until they are told no.
They will not stop until they are stopped. And there are too many people on our side, even like a Michael Schellenberger, as Aaron just pointed out, that are too vested in this paradigm. They won't be the ones to stop it. That's why a tiny little state like Iowa had to be the first place to plant a flag in the ground and say, we're not doing this anymore. And it's going to come from non-traditional places on our side to finally put an end to this once and for all. Hour 2 is next. We'll lead off with Buy, Sell, or Hold. Stay tuned. Back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, podcast with Todders and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Do that by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, TikTok, and Instagram. Please also subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you have yet to do this, please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of preference. Thank you guys on the podcast side. You guys are a big part of our show's continued existence, frankly. All right, so keep subscribing and hitting follow instead on iTunes. That way, every time we do a new episode, it's in your feed every single time. Leave us a 5-star review. Thank you if you've done one or both of those things. We appreciate them all. And we appreciate our friends over at Relief Factor as well. If you are struggling with chronic pain that usually manifests itself as that lingering achiness, stiffness, and soreness in your knee, your back, your neck, and it just won't go away. And you're like, hey, I guess that's just my plight. I got old. I mean, I'm going to turn 52 later this year, which blows my mind. But nevertheless, you might be giving up a little early. Because, yeah, I mean, eventually these bodies do give out on us, folks. Death rate remains robust, 100%. All right? So, yes, they will eventually give out. But there's a chance that maybe you're giving up too early. Try our friends at Relief Factor. It'll cost you just $20 to find out. With the 3-week quick start, see if the drug-free supplement created by physicians who can prescribe drugs because they wanted to create something that went after the inflammation in your joints that's likely the cause of your chronic pain without creating the side effects that drugs can at times. That something is Relief Factor. May not be the right solution for you. May not be. It hasn't been for everybody that's tried it, just most of them. Over the years, over 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start from Relief Factor. 70% of them saw such great results in 3 weeks or less that they stuck with the product long term. So again, why don't you see if you don't see a difference in 3 weeks or less for just $20 by going to relieffactor.com. That's relieffactor.com. All right, coming up at the bottom of the hour, the return of the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz. But let us begin with some buy, sell, or hold. We'll get through as many of these as we can. The rest, of course, we'll have for our subscribers today in the overtime at blazetv.com/Deace. You guys have entered in your submissions. Aaron has chosen them. Todd, you and I will decide, are we going to buy it? Are we going to sell it? Maybe offer up a reason why we chose to do either. We are permitted to hold. I mean, that is an option, but it's considered a real punk out and a complete and total dereliction of the dude code. So, if you do commit this offense, there should be a very stiff penalty, shall we say, and you will have to answer for Lindsey Graham the question, what a man is. You'll have to answer that for Lindsey, Todd. And he likes vivid illustrations, Mr. Erzin. Let's get going.
I wasn't really laughing at that. I just came up with a great idea.
Okay.
Do you... no, I'll save it 2 months. Let's get started here. ID Crisis. We begin with the top 10 movies. Top 10 movies or franchises involving time or time travel as the main plot point. Edge of Tomorrow, Groundhog Day, Highlander, Frequency, Deja Vu, The Time Machine, Somewhere in Time, Back to the Future, Terminator, 12 Monkeys, Looper, and Interstellar.
I don't know if I remember Looper. 12 Monkeys is an extremely underrated film from the 90s, by the way. Somewhere in Time is my wife's all-time favorite film, and for her birthday last year, that's where I took her to the Grand Hotel there on Mackinac Island, where I got this actual hoodie, in fact. So that's a pretty good list. Edge of Tomorrow, most underrated movie Tom Cruise has ever done. Good poll on Frequency. That's I think that's Dennis Quaid and James Caviezel, if I remember right, where the guy speaks through the radio to his father in the past. I think that's the movie, right? That's, if I remember right, that's pretty good. What is the Malcolm McDowell, Mary Steenburgen film where Malcolm McDowell is H.G. Wells and he figures out in real time who Jack the Ripper is, and Jack the Ripper jumps in his time machine and to escape into the future, and Malcolm McDowell jumps into the time machine to go into the 1970s to track down Jack the Ripper. That's a really underrated movie. Maybe belongs somewhere on that list, but I think that list overall is pretty good. I'll buy it. Sure. What movie is that? I got to look that up because now it's going to bother me.
Yeah, you're right. I haven't seen that movie, Frequency, with Dennis Quaid.
Malcolm McDowell is H.G. Wells. What movie was that? Time After Time. That's right. That was the movie. Very underrated movie. There's a
movie my wife and I just rewatched recently about it's kind of a rom-com, but only the men in the family can go through time. I don't know, this movie's and it's got the, in the new Star Wars movies, the red-headed guy who played the evil SS kind of guy, and he ends up dying in the end of those Star Wars movies. He's the main character in it. Domhnall Gleeson, he was in the Harry Potter movies, but that's a good time travel movie if you and your wife just want to watch something.
I have no immediate objections to anything on the list, though, even though I don't recall Looper off the top of my head, but I'll buy it. You okay with the list?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next up, we go to Daniel Zittrick. The most annoying sports bros are those of die-hard fans of schools they never attended.
that's aimed at me. I mean, that would essentially say that you would really narrow the fan bases of most teams. I mean, what's next? You can't be a fan of a team that's in a city you never lived in. I mean, I think you can. It's America, man. Choose to root for whoever the hell you want for whatever reason you want. So I'm going to sell.
No, that's not even close to the reason why Sports Pro is a problem. That's not even a defining issue on any way, shape, or form. And you probably, by trying to do this, and as Steve said, troll Steve in this fashion, are probably Sports Pro supreme and are in utter denial. That could be the fact.
Brett Haugen has a Mount Rushmore of recent innovators who forever altered their areas of influence. Walt Disney in entertainment.
Bye.
Rush Limbaugh in political media.
Bye.
Steve Jobs, computers and cell phones.
Bye.
Elon Musk, electric vehicles, rocket tech, etc. I wouldn't have said this about him 10 years ago, but it's you go out on the road and you can't go anywhere without seeing a Tesla.
I have to tell you, though, Elon Musk maybe single-handedly created the electric car industry, and maybe also should get the credit for ridding us of the annoyance of it, because now we've got the lefties who have tried to prop the EV industry up, just burning Teslas and their own Teslas like their draft cards in the 60s, okay? Nevertheless, that is a great list.
Sure.
I'll buy
easy.
the whole list. I think that's a great list. Yeah, you bet.
Next up, we go to habitual line stepper who says Trump ramps up the deportation flights to get even more corrupt judges to expose themselves, thereby forcing the Supreme Court to step in and rein the lower courts in. Do you think yesterday, before you answered this, do you think John Roberts was just a libtard being libtard, or is he starting to sweat here because he knows that he's going to have to rein these courts in?
I think it's the latter for sure. There's been one consistent, we've talked about this on the show before, analyzing Roberts' judicial opinion making. There has been a consistent refrain throughout the course of his tenure. John Roberts is not ideological. He is an institutionalist. If he perceives you as being the aggressor against institutionalism, he's against you. So the idea of using the courts to repeal a legislative act, he steps in, he views that as against, and that's it. Now and it's also, by the way, taking away a new entitlement program. So he steps in, even though during his proceeding, the Obama administration argued that, because we were having this in an election year in 2012. And so they argued before the U.S. Supreme Court that the Obamacare mandate was not a tax, because they didn't want to put on the record that it was a tax, because they were going to get killed with that, because it was going to be the biggest tax increase in American history. So they argued that it wasn't a tax. And then when John Roberts chose to save Obamacare, what did he do? He rewrote it as a tax and said, therefore, under, what's that, the 16th Amendment, right? Is the one that established the federal income tax, I believe?
So, yep.
All right, so he said under the 16th Amendment, federal government can do basically anything it wants to you if it's called a tax, can just do whatever it wants to you if it's called a tax. Then when the Colorado State Supreme Court last year tried to take Trump off the ballot, he stepped in there, can't do that. When the Biden administration said, hey, we're going to mandate that you can't get a job at a Fortune 500 company unless you agree and consent against your will to be part of an onboarding experiment, human trial of an untested genetic serum, he stepped in and he stopped that. You see what I'm saying? I mean, John Roberts is an institutionalist. John Roberts views himself as the last man standing. He's the last gatekeeper left in America. So he is absolutely speaking out because he can sense here that some ground is being tilled to set the stage to eventually say, we've had enough. And yes, we should have done this 40 years ago, but we're doing it now. You're not all powerful. I think Roberts has convinced himself that the people are incapable of ironing out these irreconcilable differences on their own. And so his court is going to be the vehicle by which this will take place, for better or for worse. I think and I've said, now other people are saying this now. I said all along, guys, from the very beginning, who did I say leaked the Dobbs opinion? Who did I say it was from day one?
Roberts.
Roberts was. He's the one that leaked it. I 100% believe that from day one. Why? He's the only person who would have had motivation to do it. And it would explain why they're unable to find the leaker. Can't expect the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to implicate himself. Because he's the one that tried to draw a nuanced position. He took the institutionalist position. Abortion on demand goes too far. The Missouri law was going to put in place a national 15-week standard. That's the same standard that exists, by the way, in almost every country in the world that has abortion. Like, remember when Macron and France, over in France, was bitching and moaning about the Dobbs decision for a 15-week abortion ban? Do you know what the abortion law is in France, Macron's country? Do you know what it is? 15 weeks. Can't get an abortion after 15 weeks in France. Now, maybe they've changed that since. You couldn't at the time. We're one of only like 6 countries in the world that still does late-term partial birth abortion. And other countries on that list include such luminaries as China and North Korea. Can I get a point of order? If you're on an exclusive list with China and North Korea simultaneously, that is a bad list. General rule, point of order. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. We're on that list. So Roberts was going to do the institutionalist thing. Not going to overturn Roe, make sure a woman still has a quote-unquote right to choose that never existed, but abortion's gone too far. And having Democrats out there passing laws saying that you can kill a child after it's born, like New York did, like the Democrat Virginia governor was saying at the time. Remember, all this was going on at the time. And this is what led to this drive. We're going to have to overturn Roe. Roberts, as the institutionalist, stepped in, tried to, and said, no, we're going to uphold the Missouri law. Or Mississippi law. I keep saying Missouri. I'm sorry. We're going to uphold the Mississippi law, have a national 15-week ban, and just follow suit with most of the Western democracies. And then when he saw the rest of the conservative wing on the court was going to say, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and get rid of this garbage piece of jurisprudence right now. I think that's why he leaked it. He's an institutionalist. So if he views you as the aggressor against America's captured institutions being the last line of decorum in America's cold civil war, he rules against you. And he can sense that the Trump administration is laying the groundwork for a massive paradigm shift where the courts are concerned. Well, then, Steve, the courts are the aggressor here, Steve. Why doesn't he go after the courts? Oh, great question. You guys give me a minute to answer that one too? Mm-hmm. Because no one rises above their own worldview. Worldview is destiny. No one rises above their own worldview. John Roberts, in his heart, is an institutionalist. But his worldview was forged in America's law schools, where the courts determine their own jurisdiction. So he's not going to go against his own worldview. Not to mention, if he says to the lower courts, you're exceeding your jurisdiction, stop it. Well, then what's to stop us from calling into question his jurisdiction? If we now agree that the courts do have jurisdictional limits, right? The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court now agrees with us that the courts have a jurisdictional limit. Do you guys know why we couldn't apply that jurisdictional limit to an appellate court like the Supreme Court? Why it wouldn't apply to them? So no, even though the courts are the aggressor here, no one goes against their own worldview. Any thoughts on that before we move on? You guys satisfied with that explanation? Oh yeah, my answer is from Scott Glenn's Captain Bart Mancuso in Hunt for Red October. The hard part about playing chicken is knowing when to flinch. That's what you're watching play out with that question right there. And Steve just put the meat on the bone of how it's all going to go down.
All right, next we go to the Tranquil Walker, who says, not worth subscribing to Blaze unless there's 1 hour Deace overtime. Give me a break with your 9-minute overtimes. I get paid the same, whether the overtime's an hour or 9 minutes. Yeah, I just looked back. This was the overtimes that I had in my most recent archive of the shows. Just the last 8 overtimes. I keep a running archive of about the last 2 weeks before I dump them into cold storage. It's 18 minutes and 40 seconds. is the average length of our overtime.
So basically a full bonus segment, essentially.
Correct.
Which is exactly what it was.
So I'm not sure what I'm sure we've, at some point, maybe we've had flights to catch or things to do. Maybe it's been less than 10 minutes, but buy, sell, or hold, we need to do an hour of overtime for the Tranquil Walker.
If they want to pay me more, the answer is a buy. If it's not, the answer is a no. By the way, if the reason you have any overtimes at all, you can thank me for that too. We did that when they first brought us over to CRTV from the radio side, because I was concerned, well, why would people subscribe if we were giving out or when we were still on the radio side with Salem? I mean, I was concerned, why would they subscribe if it's the same show online that it is, on the radio, right? Okay. So we started doing an extra thing called the overtime. And then when we had the merger with the Blaze, they got carried here, and Blaze thought it was such a great idea. They had all their shows start doing overtimes, which might be why some of my colleagues and coworkers look at me funny when I'm down in Dallas. I cost them more work. Okay. But no, I mean, if they want to pay me to do another hour, sure.
Yeah. Coattails.
Next, we go to Viral Architect. Tough guy Erzin wore a mask more times than he's uttered the phrase Anon-Con.
Given how often he has said Anon-Con in the last 6 months, I have a hard time believing that is the case. Okay. I mean, even to the point that at times I get sick of hearing it. So I'm going to sell on that. I'm pretty confident he has said Anon-Con more times.
Yeah, I'm definitely selling, and I just love that your need to issue that Anon-Con. Trust me, I'm going to sleep even better tonight, and I was always sleeping good. Like, I own you. That's satisfying.
Next, we go to S. Born Again, who says the Nazi tactics now in play against Tesla and Tesla owners is going to spread at an exponential rate such that we will be in a de facto civil war by summer. Not the same as the Civil War yet, but there will be an ever-increasing murder count, all politically linked.
So we're already in a de facto civil war. Already in one.
Well, in terms of violence rising, though, I mean, this is not... these are not reasonable people. These are orcs. This is who they are, and it's what they do.
Next, we go to Danik Bain. One of the most underrated yet crucial items for Cash and Bongino to tackle at the FBI is to correct the previous 4 years of crime statistics.
Yeah, that Daniel would be better qualified on that. But essentially, just like they changed the unemployment, the way we kept the unemployment stat under Obama because they got tired of the stat that we have people just giving up. You guys, you might be too young to remember this, but Aaron, but you remember early in the Obama administration, Rush and everybody was pointing out that the unemployment rate was a fake because they weren't counting the people
who just pulled themselves out
that just gave up on finding a job. Remember this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so the Obama administration just decided at that point, well, they're just going to actually alter the unemployment formula and just, not even, act like those people exist. Okay. In some respects, the same game theory has been done here at the FBI crime statistics as well. So, I mean, listen, it was just a completely politically captured institution as a whole. So I'll buy.
Yeah. The amount of effort on this, I don't know how much worth there is, only because this game, they just decided they said crime was down. Democrats were parroting this. Well, they weren't. I mean, they weren't charging people with murder. They were just not charging people with grotesque crimes. Now, you can clean up the crime statistics all you want to wake people up, but the reality is, I mean, also, you don't have journalism anymore. You wouldn't, if you had real journalists, they would dig into that stuff. I think there is worth in doing this, but I don't think it just fixes the fundamental problem, and it's what Steve reminded you all the time, the social compact is broken.
Next, we go to Brad Anderson. The most interesting Marxist madness matchup would be Mamala versus Garbage. But unfortunately, it won't happen because neither can win enough to meet in the final. That would be hilarious.
That would be hilarious. That would be hilarious. Mamala is getting destroyed, by the way, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah, I thought Mamala was going to put up at least a little bit more of a fight, but maybe that one just uniquely annoys me, apparently. I'll buy.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Another sports bro one. Bullfrog was here, so was Speedwagon. Says the NFL salary cap sports bro discussions are the worst.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to sell. I know why you say that, but I'm going to sell. Here's why. It's way better than the soap opera crap that most of it is today. Okay. I mean, most of it is today just driven by the soap opera. I mean, people, they're still talking about LeBron and Stephen A. Smith. I mean, it's been, dude, enough. Okay. Either guys get a room or fight, you know, get on with your lives. Okay. So at least the salary cap discussion is about the actual sport itself and something tangible to the sport itself, as opposed to the soap opera melodrama aspect around it. So while I can see why that could be, you know, navel gazing, it's superior to the days of our sports.
Yeah. That
is most of the conversation today.
This is correct. There's actually a real topic other than your emotions. This is the soap operas for men is what this is about. It's emasculating. It makes you utterly soft and addicted to how sports make you feel emotionally more alive than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem, and it's all true.
All right, next up we go to Sam Wirtz. We will finally see a federal judge get impeached this year. Boasberg, Ali, Engelmeyer, Bates, McConnell, or Abelson are all potential candidates.
I'm going to buy. I am going to buy. I think, and let's just say I talked to some people yesterday and that would know, and I think that some form of confrontation is brewing here. Yeah.
I look at this one. Several people are outing her. The one on the transgender ruling that just came down. Her connections as a Democrat donor, Democrat causes. People are absolutely fed up with this issue. It's not like a 55-45 even. You know, most people are totally done with this thing. You impeached. Pick her.
I know this is a false choice, but I think it might be an interesting conversation. Buy, sell, or hold. You would rather impeach judges than just disobey corrupt judges. You would rather impeach corrupt judges than disobey them. I know it's a false choice.
I have to think about this because there's a messaging component to it. Okay? In the ideal situation, I'd rather just disobey them. Okay? And what I need to know, and the amount of... So, you know what? Let me answer it this way if I were in the administration. Okay? Let me try to put myself into their shoes. All right? Fair? Okay? Mm-hmm. In an ideal world, I would rather just disobey it. Okay? The question I have to ask myself is, how much time do I have? And how much political capital can I expend on this one thing? Even if it's just one thing that threatens the entirety of my presidency on a systemic level. Okay, I'm still trying to negotiate peace in between Russia and Ukraine. I have the ever-present Middle East, intelligence briefing on my desk every morning. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I've got China over there too. Okay, so it could very well be that it is a simpler messaging task to impeach a judge, make an example out of that judge, and then if they don't get the message, if the message has not been sent, then you set the stage for, listen, we held these people accountable. They will not be held accountable. They will not listen to the people. Well, I am the duly elected executive that represents the people of these United States, and I'm going to listen to the people and not any more of these judges. You see what I'm saying? That there's multiple paths. I don't know. I didn't do the hiring in the administration. Can I keep a team together based on going down one road compared to the other? We all, and this is where you get the benefit. I have a little bit of benefit working within the nuts and bolts of politics, so I'm not strictly an ideologue. Human beings are people, not algorithms. So it also comes down to what can I get a team in unity to advance and work on? Hold that team together and not have people leaking against me. And I wouldn't know that unless I was the guy that hired these people and the one that they all reported to. Okay. But one of those two things will have to be done. Those are really your only options. All right. John Roberts sent the signal yesterday. He is not going to police his own branch. He is not going to babysit his own crazies. He's not going to do it. All right. So that leaves the other branches then with the executive and legislative that we control. And those are your two options. Right. Some form, and those are your two accountability. The executive either ignores or the legislative impeaches. Those are your options. And one of those will have to be done, or they will stillborn this administration faster than you can say Anthony Fauci by the time it's over.
All right. Todd, do you have a take on this?
The rather is the ideal situation, so I'd rather ignore, but it's not close to ideal, so we just have to impeach.
Next, we go to Sean Degaden, who says Democrats who paid the Democrat National Committee $1,000 for a signed copy of Joe Biden's autobiography, and that's a fact, Jack, are beginning to suspect that it's neither signed nor an autobiography.
Bye.
Oh, appropriately snotty, I will buy. I like it. Yes. Was that auto pen? Yes. Great.
Next up, Paul Sherman has the top 5 sitcom fat husbands and skinny, attractive wife duos. 5, Fred and Wilma Flintstone.
Maybe that should be number 1.
4, Ralph and Alice Cramden.
Oh, yeah, that's the honeymooners. You bet, yeah.
Number 3, Philip and Vivian Banks.
Who's that?
Isn't that one of the...
Oh, the
80s?
No, if Will Smith's sitcom.
Oh, that's right. Fresh Prince.
Fresh
okay,
Prince,
I forgot that was their name. Thank you.
There are 2, Doug and Carrie Heffernan.
Okay, I know that one. Why can I not think of it?
Oh, he's comedian who he lost a lot of weight recently.
Oh, you're talking about Kevin
King of Queens.
Yeah, King of Queens.
Oh, gotcha.
He was a I think I can say it now because I think him and Wahlberg are both out, but him and Wahlberg were closeted pro-life donors and supporters for several years.
Oh yeah, he's out. He's Catholic.
I think they're both out
Catholic
now, so I think it's okay that I can tell you this. But yeah, I mean, this has kind of been an unkept secret that Kevin and Mark were pro-life donors and supporters for several years, but it was to be kept quiet. Yeah.
And number 1, Homer and Marge Simpson.
It's a pretty good list.
Yeah.
Sure. You bet. Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for this segment. When we come up to overtime, we'll do bonus buy, sell, or hold. Everybody's talking about Gavin Newsom's new podcast with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, and everybody's talking about the same clip where Tim Walz says he could take any of the MAGA supporters, he could take them on in a fight. That's funny, whatever. But everybody is talking about that clip. There's one clip from that podcast that I think we actually need to discuss because it's very instructive on something Steve was talking about last week. That's coming up in overtime.
Will this be an 8-minute overtime? I'm just kidding. We kid because we care. All right. I think we all know our good friend Daniel Horowitz has some thoughts on what's happening right now with the judicial coup. We'll get those and more from the prophet of woe and lamentation when we return. So our friends over at Jace Medical, they came on board in response to what they saw happen during the scamdemic. In particular, seeing award-winning medications now suddenly described as dangerous, not for public consumption. Meanwhile, here's a drug with a black box warning that when it's not working against COVID, does work to kill your kidneys. And we're going to give everybody that. And here's a toxic genetic serum that we haven't really tested and never injected in mass to everybody, except now you can't work at a company of any critical mass unless you take it too. And so they came on board very concerned that something like this would be tried again in the future. And so they created the original Jace case. That's a collection of some of the most venerable antibiotics in human history, just because they might be the next ones that suddenly are now too dangerous to take right when we need them the most. Since then, and they've been on board with us now, I think, for about 3 years. And since then, they've expanded it now. You can have customizable options to their ever-increasing menu of medications, including the aforementioned, subconsciously referenced ivermectin. You can get that too. And that way, you've got a backup of the meds you need just in case they try to kill you yet again, like they did before. All right, so if you want to get this at a discount, go to jace.com. Use the code DACE for the discount. Code DACE at jace.com. Jase. By the way, they're still doing that free giveaway for the free Jace case, too. You can register for that over there at jace.com as well. Get the discount on your Jace case and the peace of mind that comes with it as well with the promo code DACE at jace.com. Let's bring in the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation himself. Good to see you, Daniel Horowitz, and let's get right to it. It is very clear that some form of war versus the judiciary is on. I mean, Stephen Miller basically is taking the Daniel Horowitz, Steve Deace greatest hits out there on the X as we speak, and national television hits. You had John Roberts sensing the ground is being tilled for something, maybe an attempt to impeach one of these judges with his statement yesterday, basically saying, no, we have unlimited power here. All right. So just kind of curious to get your observations of what we're seeing happen here, which is nothing less than a judicial coup in my mind.
So, Steve, I mean, this is a once in 150-year opportunity. This is the biggest opportunity since the Lincoln era to finally deep six this Dred Scott stain on the country, that we don't have separation of powers, that we don't have three branches. We have one branch, an unelected branch, that in their mind could do what even in the original design of Congress, where it was very powerful under Madison's first plan, never could have done as an elected branch with, 100 people potentially in it, as opposed to one guy unilaterally or a panel of 3 or 9 on the Supreme Court. I think a couple of observations here. So number one, at a base level, this is a rerun of the first term, right? They were doing all this. In fact, I just dug up my article from when another female DC district judge struck down the ban on trannies in the military in 2018. The difference now is that because Trump is more prepared, he's truncated the period of time where he's done all this. So he's doing all this in like a month rather than over the course of maybe 2 years. So what it's done is, back then I was very frustrated, as you remember. It seemed like only a few of us were talking about this, and it undermined the entire presidency. Now it's like boom, boom, boom. It was 5 of them yesterday. It's like, okay, we're going to appropriate funding for foreigners. We're going to allow invading gangs to come in. We're going to direct foreign affairs. We're going to have mental illness in the military and commander-in-chief. All happening at once. It's making it that you can't miss it. The public is seeing it. And look, you always say that we're not governed by the rule of law. We're governed by the rule of men, political will. Mm-hmm. And the good news is, if you want to break your virginity on this judicial supremacism issue and reassert coordinate, independent branches, interpreting the Constitution properly for its purposes, it matters the issue, right? I mean, legally, it's whatever the Constitution is. Yep. But you're going to want to do it on Tren de Aragua. What
captures the energy necessary for the will to be cauterized to the point that you're talking about. Yes.
Criminal alien gang members, trannies in the military.
Yes.
This is
for us in Iowa 15 years ago, it was gay marriage, which was a winning issue for the right for 20 years until Windsor and Obergefell. And that issue captured that energy at that time. The issues that you just described would collect in that energy now and use it as a vehicle and a vessel to have the larger argument. Correct.
Yeah, the issue is right. The time is right. The circumstance. So everyone knows who the commander-in-chief is. It's like, well, you have to accept the mental illness in the military. I mean, again, they're going to start controlling troop movements. Mm-hmm. So I think the foreign affairs angle, the table is set. They've done the first step that I think they didn't do enough in the first term is you could always back down and chicken out, but at least delegitimize it. Not just I disagree, but you do not have this authority. Trash them personally. Dig up stuff on them personally, which they're doing. You want to get in the political arena? We'll get in the political arena. So the table is set. And again, what he's going to have to do is pick one of them, come out with a statement. What I would recommend he do is to delegitimize the entire thing and jujitsu it to where it really is constitutionally. I would create an office out of, the executive office of the president called Executive Review. And I would direct Speaker Johnson
I love it.
to create a panel, Legislative Review.
Yep.
And this is, by the way, literally, I'm taking from a Congressional Research Service CRS report from a few years ago. Says it's only recently that the courts have done this. The other branches kind of ceded it. Early history is replete with every branch being co-equal. And what I would do is shadow box, and I would put out in non-legalese, easy to understand, shadow box every opinion you disagree with and say, this is the way we see it. This is the way we see it. So for our purposes, we can only use our power in concert with the power we believe we have. And, Marbury, Marshall said, we swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. Got to uphold it. Exactly. We have to uphold it as well. And finally, Steve, one thing I got to say, almost anything Trump does, including what you and I want him to do, it's not immutable, right? Democrats are going to come in, even if you get things through Congress, you want to cut spending, they'll double the spending for whatever you cut when they come in. They'll do everything. But the one thing he can do that will endure forever is break the virginity against judicial supremacism. Because once you do it once, look, the Democrats are going to use it for their purposes. But here's the important thing. The one thing we're going to have next time, and I promise you, and you know this, Democrats come back around, they will send the FBI after you and me. You want to know what the next iteration of weaponization looks like? It's not if, it's when. It will happen. They are going to come back. The only thing we have is people like you in Iowa. You're in a red state, okay? Anything you and I want to do under judicial supremacism will be struck down by the courts. They'll say a state can't do this. It's not just the president. This is for the states too. Once you break that, we will have that with us forever to get to where you and I know things need to go with de facto national divorce.
100%. All right, one more question I want to ask you about here after I talk about our friends over at BIRCH Gold. All right, listen, you don't go out and buy a life jacket when the boat is already sinking. All right, so don't go out and buy gold after the economy's already collapsed, folks. All right, clearly others are heeding this advice. Gold is at an all-time high here in the first part of 2025. It's not too late for you to. You want to trust the company that can help you diversify into physical gold with thousands of 5-star reviews, A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. That is BIRCH Gold. All right, they'll specialize and help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold for no money out of pocket. All right, and you get no obligation here, just information. Get your free info kit on gold by texting the word Steve, my name, to the number 989-898. Again, text Steve to the number 989-898. Get your free info kit on gold today. Get started with BIRCH Gold by texting Steve to the number 989-898. We were asked during a buy, sell, or hold, the segment before you came on, if we were the White House, would we focus on defying a federal order or impeaching a judge? Now, in a perfect world, we do them both simultaneously and hit them on multiple fronts. But let's say you and I also don't know the inner workings of the team. What are they capable of? What are they willing to unite behind and not, backdoor leak or anything of that nature? Those are the human, influences in any, managerial position. If they said, Daniel, which one of these two would you tell us to expend whatever political capital we have on this front on? Making an example of one of these judges by impeaching them, all right, or go right after the canard of this on an egregious order. Which of the two would you tell them to take and why?
It's a no-brainer. It's obviously go for the glory, go for the touchdown, and it's actually more clearly given over to the American people. Impeachment is always very political. It doesn't seem to work that well. I'm not opposed to it, but it just reeks of politics. It gets very personal. Whenever it's about personalities more than politics, we tend not to do well with it. And ultimately, you need 67 votes. So, I mean, I agree with the notion of scaring them, having it as a blight on their record, maybe passing it out of the House. Obviously, you can never remove them in the Senate. You need 67 votes. Whereas Here, it's establishing the principle. We don't need to do anything, Steve. They don't have that authority. And I want to make it clear I support it, but I just don't support the language of defying a court. It's not the defying a court is often the courts have struck down like the armed career provisions of the Armed Career Criminal Act. So DOJ grabs a career gun felon on something and they want to vacate that, and you lock them up anyway. You grab them and you put them in prison. So that's the province of a court. And you're defying it, and you could debate whether there is a time and place to ever do that. What we're talking about is a court saying, we are going to determine, like they said, we don't think Hegseth consulted with enough people about trannies in the military. A court quite literally has no authority over that. So they're merely going about their business. They're not defying a court. A court is attempting, without any enforcement mechanism, to defy the executive branch. That messaging is important. That's what they need to do. One other thing, there is a third option that I think should concurrently be pursued, and that's what Ron DeSantis mentioned, and that's the subject of Chapter 9 of my first book, Stolen Sovereignty, and that's jurisdiction stripping. It is clear from the plain meaning of the Constitution, uninterrupted case law, all the statements of the founders, and John Roberts in a 1983 memo for the Reagan administration, that Congress could completely denude the lower courts of every issue and the Supreme Court of everything except for interstate conflicts, ambassadors, and whatever is in the original jurisdiction in Article 3, Section 2. They need to craft bills taking them out of transgenderism, immigration, grant funding, and things like that.
8 times in the original Obamacare legislation, Daniel, 8 times it limits judicial review of a specific. That's why Obamacare had to be attacked strictly on the grounds of the mandate, because on several other areas they specifically limited jurisdictional review of the courts into Obamacare. It says it right there in the original bill.
But I don't want to lose sight of the main point here. A lot of people get this wrong. I'm all for jurisdiction stripping, but it's not that, if a minute before you strip them, they get in a case and then make a political rule, forever, for all the time, it's there. Right. No, it's a proof and an affirmation that they are not supreme. Correct. And the Constitution never vested them with that. Now, for like criminal cases, they could, engage in more mischief by giving bad opinions, because that is more their within their purview. So that's why it's kind of needed. But I want to make it clear, like if a court says Trump has to pull down his pants in the Oval Office and get rid of the bust of Andrew Jackson, you don't have to write a piece of legislation saying they're stripped from hearing a case over the bust of Andrew Jackson and Trump's zipper. Or if they say he has to have sex with Stormy Daniels, you don't need legislation stripping them of that. Okay, there's got to be a point where you just say no.
I think we're getting very close to that point. So interesting times. Good to see you, brother. Thank you.
Take care. See you later.
You bet. Brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. Now is the time not just to take a stand, but to lead. Patriot Mobile's already been leading. They've already been a leader in the space of the parallel economy now for years as America's only American mobile phone provider. Make the switch to them today, not because they share your values, first and foremost, but because it's a great product. It's the mobile phone service that my family uses, in fact. They've been terrific. They've got a complete America, U.S.-based customer service team, meaning you can actually understand them. They'll give you access to multiple networks across the country. So if one is better for you where you live, you can make that switch anytime for free by being a member at Patriot Mobile. They'll get you started today with a free month of service when you use my name, Steve, as your promo code at patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use my name, Steve, to get started with a free month of service today at patriotmobile.com/Steve. All right, gentlemen, 2-minute warning. Your thoughts on today's show and or the conversation Daniel and I just had.
No matter what plan you prefer on fighting judicial supremacy, and by that I don't mean like I wish it wasn't here, like you aggressively want to take this on one way or the other. Your preference may be one thing, but you're going to have to clearly be nimble. I liked what Daniel said about the possibility of impeachment, but it does really depend on which issue. And Steve, as you talked all the part, is there any L involved? Like, even if you don't have the votes in the Senate on impeaching somebody who's addicted to transgender madness, is that a loss for the right, for the public to see? They keep dying on the trans. I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either. I agree.
I would wish that we were in an era and country where the social compact were not broken. And the social compact is not only broken down here, you know, where us in the cheap seats in flyover country, it's broken up there at the nation's highest levels as well. That social compact between the three co-equal branches of government has been broken, okay? So I would prefer to live in an era where somebody steps out of line, we merely impeach them. That would be the proper way to go about things. Is that an option to us right now to follow through on at this late hour? No, it's not. So for all practical reasons, and I agree, Daniel brings up a great point about messaging this. It's not defying, it's just actually following the law. They're the ones defying the law. I love that, and that's a good reminder. But I think we're back at square one. You're just going to have to say no. Decide how you want to message it, what issues you want to expend political capital on. 3 just this week, really 2 surefire ones. There's some judge in, there's in Maryland, no, it's in Washington, D.C. saying you can't kick the troons out of the military. And then a federal judge just sticking up for terrorists and gangbangers. There's your ticket.
And if you can't do it on those, then you were just never going to be able to do it at that point. Yeah. Hey, we got a long weekend coming up. Hopefully you guys enjoy yours. We'll see you again on Monday. We're going to stick around and do overtime for subscribers. For the rest of you, enjoy the first weekend of spring. See you Monday, Romans 8:28.